Hey, it's your boy Mondo here over at mondoinvasionx.wordpress.com. You know, that website where you get your daily pro wrestling and boxing and MMA and football and hockey and all sorts of other testosterone-fueled mayhem content. So check that out. So now we got that plug out of the way. We can talk about the Royal Rumble, and pretty much the entire episode of this podcast we're talking about the Royal Rumble. Lots of big things to talk about there. Lots of things shaking out there, impacting WrestleMania season. And I think from post to post, bell to bell, second by second, it was a pretty good premium live event. I'm going to keep calling pay-per-views even though they don't use that terminology anymore, but come on, PLA to PPV, not that far of a transgression. But yeah, I mean, everything outside of the Motor City Machine Guns do-it-yourself tag match I thought was really, really good. I think both the Rumbles were incredibly well booked. Lots of surprises. Everybody got their best stuff in. Star-studded on both ends. I thought the Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens ladder match was really fun, Demolition Derby type stuff. And it really kind of paves the way. It puts everything in perspective for WrestleMania in a way that I did not expect. I mean, there are certain matches we're all kind of anticipating, and I was wrong with a couple predictions here. I think there's a couple of things that happened there which kind of tell you what went wrong and what didn't go right. Well, I guess it's kind of the same thing now, isn't it? As far as booking for WrestleMania. But we'll start with the women's pay-per-view portion of things with the Royal Rumble there. So it was won by Charlotte Flair, last eliminating Roxanne. So Charlotte Flair's been on the shelf for about a year now, so it's her big comeback match. First time she's been out there in quite a while. So not really a surprise that she won. I know they're going to pretty much stack all the cards in favor of her just because, you know, she's the legacy champion. So I think her against Tiffany Stratton could be a pretty good WrestleMania undercard match. I don't think they're going to be doing an angle with Rhea Ripley again, even though they had a pretty good match at one time. I think it's kind of the obvious course of action there. And watching the women's pay-per-view portion of things there with that Royal Rumble, I mean, man, you got so much star power. I mean, you got so many good up-and-comers. You got Jordan Grace in there. You got Julia. You got, you know, the old guard. You got Nia Jax. You got Bayley. I mean, you're going to get some really, really good matches out of these women for, you know, years and years now. And they're reliable and they're dependable. And it was really well booked. I mean, you went into it not really sure who was going to win it, but lots of great spots. A couple of good surprises there. I mean, nobody expected Trish Stratus to win, but it's cool to see her come in there. I think one of the strangest things about the entire show is Indianapolis, and Indianapolis is not representative of the rest of America or the world for that matter, but the fact that Chelsea Green was over as she was kind of threw me for a loop. I mean, maybe she's kind of resonating with middle America in a way that us internet wrestling community marks just aren't aware of, but yeah, a very, very good Rumble. I thought it was very well paced. I love seeing Nia Jax come in there and basically play Big Van Vader and just toss everybody around, and had that great, you know, old spot where everybody ganged up on her and just shuck them around like she's Yokozuna in 93. Great stuff. I mean, you watch that, you can't help but be entertained. So who's Rhea Ripley going to face in WrestleMania now? I mean, Roxanne Perez is a pretty good choice. I mean, you got Alexa Bliss coming back. When all the dirt sheets were saying she was going to AEW, well, how much trust you want to invest in that now? Yeah, I don't see Rhea Ripley and Alexis Bliss doing it. I mean, they'll have something else kind of lined up there. Liv Morgan and Alexa Bliss, I think, is a good one. That could be a good WrestleMania undercard match. So, moving forward, my big three WrestleMania prediction matches, I think you're going to be doing Charlotte Flair and Tiffy. You're going to be doing Rhea Ripley and Roxanne, and you're going to be doing Liv Morgan and Alexa Bliss. I think all those are really, really solid undercard matches. Should be pretty decent. Not a whole lot to complain about there. Now, the one thing I can complain about the show, though, is that Motor City Machine Guns do-it-yourself match. This really had no business being on the pay-per-view, to be honest with you. I mean, 2 out of 3 falls, 2 teams that really aren't over with anybody. They're not over with the hardcore fans, not over with the internet fans, not over with the Hoy Poily fans, not over with the commoners, the guys that aren't smart. I mean, they're just 4 really vanilla guys who Triple H likes just because they're veterans and they're reliable. And I mean, admittedly, it was an all-right match. It was a passable match, but like nothing spectacular, and it really took the momentum down. And I think this match is kind of indicative of where other promotions go wrong and where the WWE has been succeeding. You look at the three matches on the show that really excelled for WWE at the Royal Rumble, the two Rumbles themselves and the Cody and Kevin match. I mean, they're built around emotion. You know, you're not cheering specific moves. They're not interchangeable. You're cheering the wrestlers and the personalities, and has that vested interest. You know, it's like going to a football game. How much fun is going to a football game if you're going to root for both teams? I mean, it's pointless. There's no, you're just kind of sitting there with the thumbs in the popcorn box, not doing anything. There's just no point to it. And that's what made wrestling great in the 80s and 90s, all the 2000s. You got to have one person you really want to see win and another person you don't want to see win. And with a Rumble, I mean, it's like a mega crossover event like that, because you got all these personalities that you like and you don't like, all jumbling together. And you have that element of surprise about not knowing who's going to win. It's an emotional pressure cooker. It works. It's effective. It's why every year the Royal Rumbles are going out of your way to even feel laughs fans. Just really entertaining material. Even if you don't like legitimate, actual pro wrestling, you can like the Royal Rumble. You know, it's basically, you know, tug of war, you know, King of the Mountain, Survivor with body slams. Anybody can get into that. But this match, the Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin and Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, that match, I'm sorry, it was just there. I mean, there were like a couple of moves they popped for, but that was it. They were popping for moves and not the wrestlers themselves. And that's not a good sign. That's not the core of what, you know, good professional wrestling ought to be. And I don't really see much potential. I think after that kind of performance and that kind of, you know, public reaction from the crowd, I mean, they're going about as far as they can go. I mean, you really can't push these guys any further. I mean, they're basically like slightly elevated NXT tier wrestling at this point. Like imitation AEW is basically kind of what it is. And, you know, why bother with that? So, yeah, that was the only thumbs down for the entire show for me. Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens match, you know, it's a ladder match, demolition derby, you know, basically everybody going to a tornado inside a Home Depot. And that's pretty much what we expected. Now, there's been some bad multi-man ladder clusters over the couple of months here. Stuff in New Japan, there was one earlier this year I thought was really bad. But usually when you only have two guys involved in the contest, it gets a little bit better. You know, it's a little bit more subdued, a little bit more pacing, a little bit more focus on the actual characters and the moves and the transition, and not just people, you know, plummeting to the death 20 times over in the course of 10 minutes. But yeah, this was good. I mean, you had a lot of great moments. You had Kevin Owens in there, you know, breaking off a piece of the ladder and, you know, choking Cody with it. You had, you know, that teaser of the package pile driver on the announce desk. You had Chekhov's ladder there between the ring and the desk, and, you know, Kevin getting thrown through it for the finish. I mean, it was a really good ladder match. I mean, not one of the best ladder matches of all time, but it was solid. You know, I gave it like an 8 out of 10. You know, it was respectable. And then we move along to the Men's Royal Rumble itself. If you've been living under a rock for the last couple of days, surprise, it was won by Jey Uso, who nobody predicted to win this one. Now, here's something I did not know, and this is something I think might be sort of a variable as we look into the world of professional wrestling booking moving forward. Now, even though professional wrestling, as we all know, is predetermined and therefore not a legitimate athletic competition, people still belt out it. Like, and I know, I'm one of those guys where if you say someone's betting on pro wrestling, buddy, you got a gambling problem. You need to go see a doctor about that. But the fact that you got these crossovers like FanDuel and like all these other organizations, people bet on it, people are going to bet on pro wrestling. And apparently, if you bet on Jey Uso to win the Royal Rumble, if you bet like $100 on it, he was like a plus 2,000 favorite, so you would have made like, what, $1,200, something like that? I mean, that's something you got to take into consideration for booking now, because now you got to be thinking, well, you know, what's going to make Vegas happy? You know, what's going to make these sponsors happy? What's going to give, you know, people, change the money line and keep people vested and interested, you know, and that could be something to think about moving forward. You know, you're not really hearing a lot about that from the dirt sheets and some of these YouTube personalities about how, you know, online gambling is impacting the future of professional wrestling, but I think we're seeing shades of it already. I'm not saying that's why Jey Uso won explicitly, but, you know, I think it's not something that's not in the equation altogether. I think there's certainly some elements there that might be pushing the the block a little bit forward as we go ahead for WrestleMania and beyond. But yeah, Jey Uso, it's one of those things where you hear a lot of people complain about it, saying he shouldn't have won, John Cena should have won. Obviously, they're setting John Cena up for an Elimination Chamber event where it's pretty much a given, since The Rock's not involved in the picture, so far anyway, that it's going to be John Cena and Cody Rhodes there for the main event for WrestleMania. So John Cena's going to have his path to the Elimination Chamber, probably, and so him getting eliminated last by Jey Uso, I think, it's kind of a shock. I mean, I probably would have had John Cena win the Rumble just so you have that moment, but maybe the Elimination Chamber could be an even bigger triumph for him. But there are people complaining about Jey Uso winning this one, saying that, he's a media creation, he doesn't deserve to win, that you should put over a guy like John Cena, who's like a veteran, who's on his last legs. And then you realize, wait a minute, same people saying this about Jey Uso today in 2025 and him winning the Rumble, these are the same things that are being said about John Cena when he was winning the Rumble in 2008, in 2013. They're calling him a media creation. They're calling him corny. They're calling him king. They're calling him just someone who appeals to middle schoolers. Everything you want to criticize John Cena for, you can say the same thing about Jey Uso. And the internet wrestling community was wrong about John Cena. He's one of the best workers we've ever had in the industry. I'm not saying Jey Uso is there yet, but he's over. He's got a personality. He appeals to kids. He's got a wide demographic appeal. He's a pretty decent in-ring worker. I mean, he's not there 100%. He's still got some stuff to kind of fine-tune. But yeah, he's had some good matches before. I think Gunther is like a really good, foil for him. They've already had some good matches against each other already. And, you pace it out for 20, 25 minutes. That could be a really, really good WrestleMania, co-main event. I mean, stay tuned. So Jey Uso, I was kind of shocked by it, but, a couple days later, it just kind of sunk in. It's kind of making more sense. Like, I understand, why they went that course of actions. Because it's a lot easier to get John Cena in the main event with Cody Rhodes than it is coming up with a storyline for why Jey Uso would challenge Gunther again. Because you got so many contenders there. So many guys who come out of the woodworks for that. So this one, I think, kind of clarifies that picture. They kind of went the path of least resistance on that one as far as booking. So it makes sense. It makes a whole lot more sense 2 days later when you've had time to think about it than it does immediately afterwards. But it was a good moment. It's been a while since we had a real surprise win for a Royal Rumble. So seeing that happen kind of keeps you on your toes. Kind of keeps you invested in the product moving forward and kind of realizing that you really don't know what to expect. Anything truly can happen in the WWE, including Vince paying Brock Lesnar to pee on people, allegedly. As far as the rest of the Rumble, I mean, obviously the thing about the Rumble every year is you kind of see the WrestleMania picture. The Rock did not show up, which I thought was something he was going to do, but he did not. So I'm guessing that means that he's not going to be involved in the WrestleMania picture. For a time there, it seemed like The Rock and Cody Rhodes was going to happen, or The Rock versus Roman Reigns was going to happen, but guessing not. I mean, we've still got plenty of time for new developments to happen, but it seems like he's not going to be involved in that to any great capacity. Beyond that, the other thing is with Roman Reigns and CM Punk, they were kind of destined for a one-on-one showing, but with the triple elimination there with Seth Rollins, so they're kind of paving the way for a three-way match at WrestleMania at some point. So obviously, CM Punk is still owed a favor by Paul Heyman, so you kind of expect him to turn on Roman there and kind of line himself a Punk at some point during that match. And maybe Seth's just around to eat the pin. You got those two guys with major star powers and maybe or maybe not prima donnas, who you listen to. So he's there, and that should be a really fun match if it goes that direction. I mean, you could not, but it seems like that's kind of the way it's going. Logan Paul, you got him going in there. I mean, I don't like him as a person, but as far as an in-ring performance, pretty entertaining. I wouldn't be surprised to see him going up against somebody like, AJ Styles. Seems pretty good. I mean, that's a good, reliable pick there for a match. Kind of good Styles. Again, no pun intended there. As far as, the athletic stuff and the aerial maneuvers, I think it's a good mixture. Another one they're kind of teasing, nobody's talking about, is Braun Breaker against Jacob Fatu. That could be really, really fun stuff for the IC title. Just two behemoths going in there and just wailing on each other. That's another good one. What else do we see there? Drew McIntyre and LA Knight. Probably going to get a match out of that one. There's some apparently some internet dirt sheet scuttlebutt there and some rumors that, Drew McIntyre, I thought, LA Knight took some liberties in the match, which of course is going to be, of course, if it's being reported by the Wrestling Observer, it's got to be true, right? The same way like Alexa Bliss was going to show up at the Rumble. You gotta take that with a grain of salt. So I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes like an actual storyline angle delving into a WrestleMania match. You gotta have that one comedy moment every year. So we had I Show Speed, some YouTuber I'm not really familiar with, goes out there and just gets absolutely wrecked. God, that guy just got hammered by Otis in that table spot. Good God. But yeah, all that taken into consideration, it's a star-studded Rumble. Pentagon, not Pentagon, Penta, I'm sorry, I had to go the extra length. Even though, he did get eliminated, like 2 minutes in the match, both his feet did touch. I watched it in slow motion. I think he looked pretty good, had a good performance there. He went 40 minutes, his trial by fire. I think you got a lot of potential there. A lot of luchadors you can put him up against. But the Ray Penta match, I think, is going to be the one at WrestleMania. That seems like a foregone conclusion. A lot of guys really didn't have much to do. Chad Gable, obviously going to have a storyline for him somewhere for WrestleMania. I didn't really have one open up there against, any number of luchadors. And all the luchadors except for Ray and Penta were just kind of there. Like Andrade, kind of floundering around. Santos Escobar, just kind of floundering around. There's not much popping up for them as far as things to do. Dominic Mysterio, I don't really know what they're going to do with him. There's no clear-cut, obvious path for him as far as a WrestleMania opponent in the wake of the Rumble. Looks like we're going to be doing Damian Priest and Finn Balor. That seems like something's going to be happening eventually, if not a WrestleMania before then. So yeah, like I said, a good Rumble. Women's Rumble was good. The Men's Rumble was good. The Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens match was good. And I'm guessing we're going to be doing Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn again at some point for another WrestleMania build-up. It's going to be sort of that tie-in springtime rivalry. So yeah, it was a good show. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was entertaining from bell to bell. And anytime you can keep someone glued to their seat for a match that goes on for an hour and a half, he did something right. So there might be some naysayers out there, but as far as I'm concerned, 2025 Royal Rumble, thumbs up from this boy right here. All right, moving along from there, we got a UFC show coming up this weekend, running in Australia, and more in Australia pay-per-views that end up not becoming pay-per-views in just a bit here. So you kind of run in the Saturday before the Super Bowl, which is kind of a gutsy call there. It's going to be overshadowed no matter what. But before we get into that, I think the other story, and this is one of those things where I'm absolutely shocked. This is not a bigger, not just like a UFC sports story, but like an actual news story. In case you don't know, there is a fighter on the UFC roster named Bryce Mitchell. And Bryce Mitchell, let me put it to you like this. Bryce Mitchell is a dumb son of a bitch. There's no other way to say it. He's like a literal flat earther in the year 2025. And he's like every boom of Facebook conspiracy theory you can think of, he believes it. He thinks it's real. He thinks vaccines are filled with demons and all this other stuff. He drinks raw milk. He's into all that crap. So anyway, he's also, pretty much an avowed homophobe, an avowed racist, an avowed transphobe, an avowed, white supremacist. In fact, he might be the first guy to actually come out and say he actually is one. He doesn't really hide it at all. So anyway, he made some comments on a podcast praising Hitler, where he's like, Hitler, from my own research, I'm not really sure what research he did, but I'm guessing it was probably, maybe 3 minutes of an Alex Jones YouTube video or something. He decided that Hitler was a great guy, that he did a good job, quote unquote, getting rid of the Jews and keeping all the Germans from becoming gay. Not like there were any high-ranking gay Nazi officials or anything like that. Herman Röhm. That name doesn't exist. But, so anyway, you kind of figure if there was anything that you could do to commit career suicide, it would be going out in a public forum and talking about how much you love Hitler and how much you support his policies and claiming the Holocaust didn't happen. If this happened in any other sport, if Luka Doncic said this, if Josh Allen said this, if Tiger Woods said this, if anybody in any position other than the UFC would have said this, they're fired, they're done, they're banned for life, they're never going to compete again. But you got Joe Rogan and you got the UFC, and you got Dana White. And UFC, if you watch any show last year, was basically glorified campaign materials for Trump. You got Elon Musk showing up front row, mean bugging the crowd during pay-per-views, spreading his crap. You got Kid Rock in there. So, I mean, it's pretty much, far right, all right propaganda. I mean, they don't mistake that. That's what it is. So there was a presser, when they're talking about, what Bryce said, and Dana White basically said, well, I think it's stupid, but that's free speech, and we're not going to punish him for it. And if you're mad, you can watch him fight the next pay-per-view, and maybe he'll get beat up. That was his response. Now, saying Dana White believes in free speech is pretty stupid, because he's fired people before for talking about sponsors. So apparently he says something bad about Reebok. Oh, that doesn't count as free speech, but praising Hitler, we're all right with that. I mean, wasn't Miguel Torres the guy who got, fired for making like a rape van joke on Twitter like in 2011? Okay, so that's too far, but saying that you love Hitler and the Holocaust didn't happen, that's passable. You get a free pass for that. Oh, maybe it's just because, this Bryce Mitchell guy, he's white. He's a hardcore Republican. His political ideals and racial ideals probably align with white, and I know how ironic that last name. And nothing's happening. So, I don't know. I'm kind of shocked that, ESPN and Toyo and Budweiser and all these other people who have major sponsorship deals aren't cracking down saying, hey, fire this guy or we get rid of our sponsorship. This would have happened 2008 for sure. 2012, probably. 2018, maybe it would have happened. But now, 2025, when all this shit's normalized, what can you do? So that's the UFC for you. You got Bryce Mitchell going out there talking about how much he loves Hitler, how much he thinks the Jews deserved it, and no punishment whatsoever. Nothing. Maybe he'll even get a co-main event on the next pay-per-view. Wouldn't that be great? Maybe then he can, set a cross on fire for his entrance or something. But yeah, that's just another reason to never actually pay for the UFC if they're going to allow this kind of stuff happening. That's why I always go to one of those, Chinese or Russian websites and watch it the next day and make sure it doesn't get any money. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to watch UFC shows, remember you are supporting a political terrorist, and it's best if you just, illegally stream everything so they don't get any profits. That's the last thing they need. And that's my grandstand for today. So, yeah, and getting off my high horse here now, going to the actual show. UFC 312, only really two fights here that are really worth talking about. You got Dricus Du Plessis taking on Sean Strickland again in a rematch. Should be a good one. The first fight was pretty good. I mean, it's also that fight where Strickland basically kind of forgot how to throw punches. He forgot how to, actually, fire back. He just waiting for a count that never happened. And, Dricus, he's a hell of a ranged fighter. Should be an entertaining fight. I think Dricus is going to win this one again, but I think he's going to have a better showing. And this is one of those rare shows for the UFC where the undercard match, not only is it actually kind of more appealing than the main card fight, it even has women in it. This is the Zhang Ali, Tatiana Suarez fight for the Women's Bantamweight Championship. Should be a barn burner. I mean, the UFC is really high on Suarez being, some sort of, big name fighter for the future. And this is a big test. We all know Ali, she can throw down. So that should be entertaining. So I'll be checking those two fights out if nothing else. But not giving UFC my money because, they'll probably just spend it on, swastikas and Mein Kampf memorabilia. All right, we'll wrap up the show here by very, very briefly talking about AEW because, frankly, there's not a whole lot to talk about, to be honest with you. I mean, one of the things that, we kind of go back a little bit here, is we were told for a couple months there that Grand Slam is going to be a huge show. It's going to be like a stadium show in Australia. It's going to be as big as All In, All Out, or whatever it's called, All In, the one in Wembley. It's going to be, kind of comparable to that. But then as the months dragged along, we're kind of hearing some news that maybe the ticket sales weren't that good. And then they made the announcement, okay, we're not doing the stadium show after all, we're going to a smaller venue. And like, well, that's not really a good sign about the prospects of the show, but whatever. It's still, Australia. It said they're debuting a pretty big market there that's kind of historically been friendly for pro wrestling events. And then a couple of weeks back, we get the news that, oh, by the way, it's not going to be a pay-per-view either. It's going to be a random free TV show. This is going to replace Collision during the, I don't know, whatever it's coming up. What do they have coming up in February that takes time off? Like an NBA show, like an All-Star game or something, I'm guessing, maybe. So, You went from having like this multi-million-dollar stadium show that's going to be like a Wembley caliber show in Australia to a small arena show to a free TV show. And so far, there's only like 2 matches announced for it. It's coming up on the 15th, is it? 16th, something like that. Well, I mean, I don't really know what to say. I mean, it's not a good sign for the company. I mean, you got the WWE out there, that's got 60,000 people showing up for NFL stadium shows for the Royal Rumble, and AEW's basically doing what they're doing. I mean, I probably need to make an entirely separate video about basically what AEW's been doing wrong for the last couple of weeks or months, or basically a year now. But clearly, it's obvious that what they're doing isn't working, and I don't think having Mariah May and taking on Toni Storm and her gimmick that changes every week is really going to change the direction for it. I don't think having Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega taking on Takeshita and Fletcher in a tag match is going to do it. I mean, I'm sure it's going to get really favorable reviews from the Observer. It's going to get a lot of star ratings. It's going to get a high cage match rating. But guess what? Those don't translate into money. Those don't translate into ticket sales. They don't translate into merch sales. They don't translate into TV ratings. And I think that's one of the problems with pro wrestling today is we give too much value in nerds. Too many nerds think their own self-inflated opinion is the gospel, and it does not equate economic success. It does not even equate storyline success, as we're seeing here with the fate of some of these companies. So AEW, Grand Slam Australia, maybe they should call it Strikeout. I think that's a little bit more fitting considering the economic headwinds going there. All right, and I don't want to do it, but I'm going to have to. Super Bowl, I'm not watching. I'm just going to watch the Puppy Bowl all day and eat snacks. But I got to make a prediction here. Kansas City and Philadelphia. I hate to do it. I want to go with Kansas City because why wouldn't they? The refs have bailed them out all season. Maybe, that Kelsey guy proposed to Taylor Swift on the sideline for this one. That's all everybody will be talking about. I'm sure Patrick Mahomes will, get a really nice call there in the last second and get a touchdown pass 10 seconds remaining, and it'll be great. Maybe next year it'll be different. Maybe next year, they'll have maybe they can try having parts where Mr. Fuji comes out and throws salt in people's eyes and the referees don't see it. So yeah, it's kind of telling you how old I am. I'm so old. I remember when pro football was real and pro wrestling was rigged. Now it kind of feels the other way around, doesn't it? Alright, well, that's all I got for this week. I really don't know what else to talk about. If you're into boxing, if you didn't watch the David Benavidez, David Morrell fight from February 1, great fight. Probably the best fight of the year so far. Well, really the only fight worth watching of the year so far. Check that out. ONE FC's been doing some pretty good stuff. If you haven't been watching that, check it out. They got a good show coming up in March. We'll probably talk about it when we get closer. And please get your pets spayed and neutered. That's all I got this week. See you around.